Hello folks, welcome to our canal Channel Jose. Today we're going to talk about the gaskets that the 91 to 94 Toyota Tercel throttle body has and the 95 to 99 Toyota Tercel has. They're similar, but in specific, we're going to talk about the 91 to 94 Toyota Tercel. And also this might apply for the 95 to 99 Toyota Paseo. It's almost the same as the 95 to 99 Toyota Tercel. So we have the gaskets. There's these gaskets are very critical because if you have a bad gasket on these components, you can have an air leak and it can actually throw off your readings on the O2 sensor and the computer and all that. So you might run too rich on fuel or too poor on fuel. It can affect the performance on the engine if these gaskets are not actually tight seal. So we're going to show you how many gaskets these throttle body have and where they go and why it's so important to have brand new gaskets. When you take these apart, don't reuse the gaskets. And with that said, let's get started. So this is the throttle body for a 91 to 94 Toyota Tercel, and this will be the entrance of the air going into the engine, going in. And as we move the throttle body, the butterfly opens and then the air continues into the engine. Well, will be the platinum or the intake manifold of the engine, and right between them, the throttle body and the platinum, will be this gasket. So this is how it will be bolt on right there. So if this gasket is actually broken and is not doing its job, you're gonna have a leak between the platinum and the throttle body, and that's gonna create a rich system, or you're gonna have a poor idle because the air is too much air and poor and low fuel. So the sensors are gonna be thrown off because there's not gonna be an exact reading. That's why it's so important when you take the throttle bodies off and you do some maintenance to it, throw a brand new gasket in there, so that way you start with a fresh gasket so you don't have a leak. Especially now with all these sensors, if you have a vacuum leak or any source of an air leak that is not going through all the sensors, is not being registered completely, you're gonna have something going wrong and you're gonna have a check engine and your engine is gonna be shaking and you're gonna have problems. That's why throw a brand new gasket on the throttle body every time you take it off to do some cleaning or maintenance. So this is the first gasket that we're gonna show you, and this is simple. This is just almost a square with a circle in the middle and 4 holes for the bolts to go through, and bolt it into the platinum. So it just sits right there. So all it is just seals between the platinum or the manifold and the throttle body. That's all it does. So then we're gonna try to make this in a PDF and have it saved, so if we can, if some people can print it out just at the exact same size and they can just trace it into the material where you can create gaskets. We're gonna try to do that. So hopefully we can do that and have these gaskets available, even the idle air control valve. We have this gasket that we ordered online and it took a while for us to get it. This will be a hard one to get, and also the O-ring for the idle air control valve. So this will be another hard to get, but this is a rubber piece, so we can trace this. So this one we can do, and this one. So hopefully we can have those two. And now, with that said, we're going to take the idle air control valve off, and we're going to show you where that gasket goes and where that rubber O-ring goes as well. Because if you take this valve off, pretty much this gasket is going to break in pieces, and that's going to be a bad scenario. So you want to have a brand new gasket and a new O-ring for that valve. Because if that valve doesn't have a right gasket, it's going to leak air all over the place, and you might even get freon from or coolant going into the valve, going into the valve and coming out. And instead of doing that, it's going to leak right in here where the air goes through the valve, and you're going to have it going into the engine. So you don't want to have that scenario. So that's why you need the O-ring as well. So now we're going to show you where these two gaskets go on the idle control valve once we set about the throttle body. So this is the idle air control valve from 91 to 94 Toyota Tercel, and it has a high point, and this goes right into the throttle body, right like that. And this groove right here is for the pipe or the piece of tubing sticking out of the throttle body, so everything falls in. So your liquid, your this will be for vacuum, these two, and these are two for cooling, for the coolant. So hot coolant goes through it, and it makes this idle control valve work mechanically with temperature. So there's like a thermostat stuff in here, so it closes the valve as it heats up. So then it starts restricting the air, so your RPMs go lower as it heats up the engine. So, but today we're gonna show you that the gasket goes right in here, and if this idle control valve doesn't have the gasket or it has a cracked gasket, you're gonna have some idle problems as well. Not just it can create some idle problems. So we recommend that every time you take this idle control valve off, you replace the gasket, a cardboard or this material gasket, and you put a new O-ring as well. Because the thing about the O-ring is that the coolant goes in and then it comes out through here and it transfers into the idle air control valve, and then it comes out through here. But if in the transition right in between it leaks right there, you might even get it into the throttle body and it go into your block, into your pistons, because of that small leak. So then that can create problems. So that's why we put new gasket right here and the O-ring right in there. So now the gaskets, in the order that we put them, is that we put the valve back on. Once we did the maintenance to it, we put the gasket, and we have to match the holes on it, and the big hole for the this is for the coolant to be transferred from the throttle body to the valve, and from the valve into the hose, so it just goes through. And then once we do that, we put the O-ring right on this area, and that's to seal between the valve and the throttle body on the coolant side, so that way there's no mixing coolant on this area. So it just goes in, through, comes out, transfers through here, and then it goes out. Otherwise you can have a leak right here and it can seep through into the chamber of the air, and it might be sucked into the engine, and that can create a moisture, and you're gonna think you have a blown head gasket or something like that. But because this O-ring. So once we do that, we put some lubricant in here, so it slides right into the groove, and then once we put it, it slides right in, so that way it doesn't bite itself in the aluminum, it rips. So as you can see. So all we did is we just put a brand new gasket on the idle control valve and the O-ring that goes in there, and then we put the new gasket for the throttle body, and we don't put silicones in either one, because if you want to take them off again, you're going to start putting a wedge in there and you're going to damage the aluminums. So that's why we don't use silicones. We just put the gasket on, and that should be good enough. So these are very important. So put them brand new every time you take them off. And what I will do is, you end up with some of these pieces from the old gasket when you take them off. So if you have some of those stuck into the throttle body, use a utility knife, scrape it, clean it, and then put the new gasket and put everything back on. Because if you start using silicones to fill in these gaps and have some old gaskets in there, you're gonna have uneven surfaces, and then you're gonna have some bad idle. So this is very important gaskets to have brand new on these throttle bodies. Well folks, this video we wanted to expose it because sometimes we don't think these gaskets are very important, but in these scenarios, if you're replacing the throttle body or you're taking it off to clean it and putting it back on, just buy that $2, $3 gasket and put it right in there, because these guys, can create a headache if you use the old ones. You might have a poor idle, really bad scenario where the car is running rich or poor. Once you put a brand new gasket, at least you know that you're putting something brand new, and hopefully it's not creating that problem, because they shouldn't. So the most important ones are the gaskets. And we don't add silicone to these gaskets on the throttle body, because then it starts creating a problem when we want to take them off again to clean and or do some maintenance. Because aluminum, once you start trying to get it off with a wedge, you start damaging the aluminum, and that's just you don't need to do that. And so just throw a gasket, tighten it. On the idle air control valve, those are O-rings that we presented. We couldn't find them in anywhere, because those are components that we don't replace so often. So we had to go to like a hardware store and we had to take the throttle body and the idle air control valve to put the O-ring one by one, trying to fit or find something that will fit right in there. We found it, and it was 3/8 inside and a 1/2 inch diameter outside. So just so we can get you in the ballpark on how big was that. And we're gonna try to get those 2 gaskets on PDF, so that way if somebody asks for it, we can just send them that picture, and then you can print them out, and hopefully it comes out to the scale, so that way you can just transfer it to the gasket paper and you can cut it out. Because sometimes it's not about how much it costs, it's about finding the components or the gasket, and that's the hardest part sometimes, like the O-ring that goes in there. So we couldn't find the O-ring anywhere, so we have to go into hardware stores and take these components. And sometimes people kind of question what you're doing with that stuff in here, but sometimes you gotta take the stuff in to have the right stuff fit on it. So with that said, folks, for our friends who are watching our video, haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe. If you like our video, give us thumbs up, share it, and we'll see you soon with more videos here in el canal El Chano Jose.